Hi, folks. As mentioned, I wanted to do a quick overview of your research project. So when you log in to our Canvas page, this is the main page. You can access information about your research project simply by scrolling down and clicking on this link. So this is going to take you to our general instructions for this entire project. So it's a general overview. If you look down here, research proposal, annotated bibliography, research PowerPoint presentation, you can click on these individual assignments and it's going to give you specific information for those assignments. Once again, this page right here is going to have all the information or a link to any information that you may need. So let's go start all the way in the top, instructions. So you are going to have the option of working individually or in groups. This is completely up to you. You do not have to work with a partner, but if you want to and you're comfortable working with someone, that is definitely an option. A racial or ethnic group cannot be researched by more than 2 individuals. So keep in mind that at this point, Tuesday in the afternoon, your research topics are due to me by tomorrow night. But at this point, 2 students have already selected the ethnic group Mexicans. So that means that Mexican can no longer be chosen as a topic. Just one thing that I do want to point out, make sure you understand the difference between a racial and ethnic group. If you decide to go with a racial group is a homogenizing category. It's an umbrella term that includes different groups of people. So for example, racial groups include Asian, white, Latinos. When we look at these groups, these categories actually include different groups of people, different cultures, different languages, different backgrounds, different histories. But these racial categories simply lump together groups of people for whatever reason. So in this case, if we look at Asian Americans, this category includes people of Japanese descent, Chinese descent, Indian descent, Filipino descent, Korean descent. So once again, different groups of people, different backgrounds, different languages, different cultures are just thrown together and just labeled Asian. So just be mindful of this if you decide to go with a racial group. Just keep in mind that if we go down, if you notice cultural foundations, where did this group originate? It's going to be a bit more complicated for you to explain because you're going to be looking at a large group of people. You're not going to be looking at specific, for example, let's say you're interested in doing your research on Chinese Americans. That's going to be very specific. You can look at the migration patterns of Chinese folks in this country. You can look at, where this group originates. But if you decide to go with Asian, you can kind of see how it gets a bit more complicated because you're looking at different groups of people. So just keep that in mind. Once again, Mexicans is no longer available. This is being recorded Tuesday afternoon. And by the way, if you are interested in seeing what topics are no longer available, just if we go back here, this is the general page, just click on here, selected research topics. I don't have a list of topics for you to pick from. You simply pick a group that you are interested in and look here and see what's already been taken. So at this point, these are the topics that have been taken. Like I mentioned, Mexicans is no longer available. So if we go back. So each student or pair is going to submit a research proposal and an annotated bibliography. All of this is simply preparing you for this final PowerPoint presentation. You will need a minimum of 6 credible sources, and 3 of these have to be academic articles, no exceptions. So if I don't know if you've taken a minute to kind of explore our class, if you go to discussions, no, sorry, not discussions, let's actually go back. If you go to assignments, you're going to notice that I have an extra credit assignment here. So one of those extra credit assignments, you can either complete the assignment that you skip, or you can also complete library research workshops. And you can do, I believe there's 3 of them, and you can do all 3 of them for 10 points each. So you can actually visit the website to see what's available. But the reason I bring this up is there's workshops in case you're not familiar with the research process, in case you're not familiar on what is an academic journal, how to find them, how to read them. You can look at what workshops they have available at the library. And oftentimes, I believe they do have finding and evaluating articles. So this would probably be a great option if you are not familiar with this research process and how to find research articles. Keep in mind that these trainings are great because you can actually complete them self-paced. So you don't have to attend a live class. You can do it at your own pace. So the reason I bring that up is because, once again, you do need to find a minimum of 6 sources, and 3 of them do have to be academic articles. I also have, if you go back to home, if you go to other resources, I have a button here for the Mount SAC Library, and I actually have a video linked that shows you how to access the library databases. So you can definitely go ahead and watch this if you have time, how to access library databases. And essentially, like a library database, this is where you find these research articles. Okay. So the last thing you're going to submit is a cohesive research PowerPoint presentation. So this entire project is going to be worth 250 points. Once again, you have different components, and this research proposal and annotated bibliography, these essentially help you start building this final research PowerPoint presentation. And I purposely create this assignment with different assignments that stack on each other, so you don't leave your research PowerPoint presentation until the last minute. I was a student once. Still am a procrastinator. So I would be one of those students that would work on the PowerPoint presentation, the weekend before it was due. So I really don't want you guys to do this. Honestly, procrastinating like that does not give you the best results. So this is going to force you to work on these assignments ahead of time. So this research proposal is going to be worth 50 points. Your annotated bibliography is going to be worth 100, and the research PowerPoint presentation is also going to be worth 100 points for a total of 250. So here, your final research project PowerPoint will include, this is essentially what this final PowerPoint presentation is going to look like for you. You are going to have a section where you discuss the cultural foundations. Where did this group originate? Look into migration patterns and current resident patterns. What are 4 important cultural characteristics of this group? For example, look at religion, personal values, traditions, family beliefs, etc. You're also going to look at a historical challenge or challenges, up to you, and you're going to analyze a particular past social event or issue that has fueled mainstream beliefs about your group. For example, if you are going to be working on Mexican Americans, you can look at the Bracero program. If you are going to do Chinese Americans, you can look at mining fields, or you can even look at the anti-Chinese sentiment of the early 1900s. And make sure you illustrate some of the challenges that this group has has been confronted with overcoming. You're going to look at contemporary challenge. So this is something fairly recent, a current social event or issue that contributes to modern day beliefs about this group. Evaluate whether these current beliefs are an extension of past ideologies or new ones altogether. For example, anti-Muslim sentiment post 9/11. So what's really interesting about anti-Muslim sentiment is it definitely was made worse after 9/11, but keep in mind that anti-Muslim sentiment had existed in this country even prior to 9/11. And then you can also look at anti-immigrant sentiment period. For example, if you're going to do your project on Latinos, on Mexicans, even on Asian immigration. And then the last one is known as countering stereotype. And this is, we're going to look at aesthetics in a couple of weeks, chapter 8. But I highly, 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 highly encourage you to go to chapter 8 and look at anti-racist aesthetic and what this means. This is going to help you with this section. This is probably the section that students have the hardest time with, just because, I'm not gonna lie, they didn't look at chapter 8. Because by the time we get to chapter 8, it's going to be towards the end of the class. So at this point, you are probably submitting your PowerPoint presentation before we even cover chapter 8. So just make sure you guys go to chapter 8 in your textbook. I'm going to try to have the PowerPoint for chapter 8 in the next 2 weeks available to you. Take a look at it. I have, different examples, and I personally feel like these examples kind of help explain this anti-racist aesthetic. So essentially what you're going to do here is you're going to choose a piece of media. So media includes everything from images, clips, songs, poems, literature, music videos, movies, you name it. This is all aesthetics. So you need to find a piece of media that challenges the stereotypes and ideologies about your group. So it could be a counter narrative that provides context to commonly held notions about your group. Discuss how or why your chosen piece of media is an example of anti-racist aesthetic. If you need more information on anti-racist aesthetic, visit the chapter 8 PowerPoint or chapter 8 on your textbook. You're actually gonna do, or one of the options for your discussion boards will deal with aesthetics. You do not have access to it yet, and I haven't changed it. So it should be available in a couple of weeks. So just go ahead and look at it. Just to get a better understanding of anti-racist aesthetic. And then the most important part of your research project, you need to show me that you understand these sociological terms. You need to show me that you understand sociology and that you can apply it. So here for your analysis, you're going to evaluate your findings. So you're going to evaluate what you found for cultural foundations, what you found for the historical challenge. You're going to essentially sociologically explain or sociologically analyze what you found. You have to use 4 sociological concepts from the textbook. So my piece of advice is, especially because our textbook, one of the biggest downfalls to the textbook, even though it's great, it doesn't have keywords bolded for you. So there is a glossary at the end of the textbook. My best piece of advice to you is go to the glossary, go to the end of the textbook and find essentially the keywords that are listed throughout the textbook and just see what sticks out. See if any of those, if you're going to run into any of those, and you can use them in your research project. So I have a couple of examples here. So some of those key concepts or key words are a historical fallacy, segregation, coded language, cultural capital, disenfranchisement, institutional racism, intersectionality, model minority, racial domination, symbolic power, interpersonal racism, whiteness, symbolic violence, etc. Also keep in mind that I actually assigned chapter 1 from my intro textbook. So it's the main sociological theories, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, and functionalism. You can also use these theories as part of your sociological analysis. So once again, just make sure this is probably the biggest chunk of your 100 points, the sociological analysis. Explain your findings using sociology. I have samples of the annotated bibliography and samples of the research PowerPoint presentation. So let's go to the research proposal. Your research proposal is due next week. So I do not have a sample of the research proposal. And I've noticed, especially in my honors classes, students get very uncomfortable when they don't have a sample. Please do not freak out over this assignment. This is simply to get you started on your research project, okay? So as long as you address what I'm asking you or what I'm asking from you, your grade will be fine. I am not going to grade you harshly. I mean, granted, if you submit a one-page paper that I can tell you wrote last minute, that's a different story. But if you answer everything that I have in, or if you essentially meet all the requirements that I have here, you will be fine. So what is a research proposal? A research proposal involves the following 4 steps: selecting a research project, reviewing the literature, designing a study, and writing the proposal. When selecting the problem, choose a topic that you are genuinely interested in. After choosing a topic, use the MountSAC database to identify articles on that research topic. Read several articles to become familiar with the research topic and to find out how studies in that area are carried out. So what are the requirements? So you can write this research proposal in APA, ASA, or as I mentioned in my syllabus, whatever writing style you're comfortable with. So whether it's MLA or Chicago, whatever you are comfortable with, as long as you are consistent, okay? And also make sure you are citing. So what is your proposal going to include? Your proposal is going to include these sections. So your title, your introduction. Make sure the proposal starts on a general level with some type of introductory remarks before going into the details of the specific research question you are proposing. This can be accomplished by providing a frame of reference, a definition, or a discussion of the significance of the topic in the field. Make sure, and this is important, make sure you include data. If you are going to be talking about poverty among African Americans and why this is a problem, it's more meaningful, or it's more, I can see that it's much more of a social problem when you start giving me actual data. 85% of blah, blah, blah. 25% of children in the United States live in poverty. Notice how if I give you a number, we can see how big of an issue it is, as opposed to simply making a statement. Poverty among African Americans is a major social problem. So just make sure you gather that data, get numbers. I like numbers, I like data. A great resource to get numerical data like that is Pew Research Center. So let me actually show you. And I always tell my students that this is a great resource for you. Actually. So they have a lot of data here. You can search, let's see, Latinos education. They're going to have a lot of information, and it's fairly recent too. Okay, so Pew Research Center, great, great, great resource for you. Okay, so let's go back to your research proposal. Discuss your racial ethnic group, discuss a contemporary challenge that you will focus on. Why does this topic need to be discussed? You're going to do your literature, or you're going to do a literature review, but also not really. You're going to do a very, 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 very simple version of a literature review. Literally, what I want from you here is, at this point, you should have 2 sources already, and one of them needs to be an academic journal. So literally in this section, just tell me, what does research show? Okay, that's it. What does research show? So you need to have at least 2 sources at this point. One of them needs to be an academic journal. Your discussion. Provide a full description of your general research design, as well as the specific method and procedures used in your research project. This shouldn't be more than a sentence or 2. Hint, you are doing library research. No one is conducting primary research. You are not required to do surveys. You are not required to do interviews. All of this will be library research. Sociological concepts. Notice that I wrote on there, this is a section that I want you to focus on. Okay, so this is a section that I want you to focus on. Describe your 4 theoretical approaches and concepts that you will be using. Are you going to be discussing conflict theory? Well, explain conflict theory to me and how you think it's going to, or what role is it going to play in your research? Are you going to use coded language? How do you expect to see coded language in your research? And what is coded language? So first thing you have to do is explain your topic and how do you think it's going to relate to your findings? Notice at this point, it's completely speculation. We don't know yet. You haven't done your research, okay? So once again, explain your topic. How do you think it's going to relate to your findings? And then your reference page. Once again, I suggest you focus on your introduction and sociological concepts. The format, double-spaced 1-inch margins, 12-point Times New Roman or Calibri font only. Your research proposal should be 1 to 2 pages. As usual, make sure you meet the minimum. I will not penalize you if you go over the 2 pages. I will only penalize you if you do not meet the 1 full page minimum. A minimum of 2 sources. One of them has to be a peer-reviewed journal article. This is going to be worth 50 points. Do not stress out about it. Give me what the requirements are asking from you. Submit it on time. You will be fine. All your submissions for your research project are going to be submitted as PDFs. So make sure you submit a PDF. This is due next week. Okay, so now your annotated annotated bibliography. So the first thing you should do is, or probably one of the biggest questions here is, what is an annotated bibliography? Great question. I actually have linked here a handout by the Writing Center that explains what is a annotated bibliography. So I'm not going to read this to you, but you have access to it. Once again, it's from the Writing Center. It explains what an annotated bibliography is, and the different types. So notice there are different types of annotation: descriptive, summary, evaluated, and a mixed approach. Here it also gives you examples of what an annotated bibliography looks like. So notice your source, your annotation. Your source, annotation. So if we go back here, I actually do have a sample for you of an annotated bibliography. I'll go over that in a minute. But for this assignment, for my class, you are actually going to be doing a mixed approach annotated bibliography. You should have a minimum of 2 paragraphs per source, but I've noticed that it usually requires about 3 paragraphs, 1 paragraph for each. 1, 2, 3. First, you're going to provide a detailed summary of your article. Second, you're going to evaluate your source. What do you think about this source? How will this tie into your research PowerPoint presentation? At this point, remember, I like data. Feel free to gather those numbers, gather the data, gather the statistics, gather the quotes that you could potentially use in your PowerPoint presentation. So here's the beauty about the annotated bibliography. You can literally copy and paste from your own bibliography into your final research presentation. That's the point of this annotated bibliography, to organize your findings. That way, when you are doing that final research PowerPoint, you literally have all your information already laid out. You have your citation or your reference citation already done. Oh, I remember reading about poverty rates among second-generation Latinos. It was that article. You can literally go back to your annotated bibliography and read your summary just to jot back your memory. That's the point of this annotated bibliography. Once again, it's to not analyze, to organize your research, making it easier for you. It's not difficult at all, but it is tedious, okay? So I'll be completely honest with you. Annotated bibliography is not difficult, but it will take some time because once again, you have to summarize your source, you have to evaluate your source, and lastly, and this is going to be the most important, okay, I repeat once again, for all your assignments, the most important part is going to be the analysis. So the last thing you have to do for each of your articles is analyze your findings with a sociological lens. What sociological concept best relates to the source? Explain the connection between your concepts and findings. For your annotated bibliography, you should have your 6 sources, minimum of 6. Remember, 3 of them have to be peer-reviewed academic journals. The other 3 can be from a reliable source. You can do a source like BBC News. Please do not use Wikipedia. Wikipedia would not be considered a reliable source. But you can do reliable sources like organization websites, or even appropriate news sources. If you're not sure about a source, just send me an email and we can look it up. Your sources are going to be in alphabetical order. You'll see what I mean by this in a minute. Your annotated bibliography can be written in APA or ASA style. Once again, completely up to you. You can also do MLA, Chicago, whatever you are comfortable with. The key here is be consistent. Don't do one citation as APA and another citation as MLA. Be consistent with whatever style you are comfortable with. And then the last kind of requirements, once again, typed, double space, 1-inch margin, 12-point Times New Roman, or Calibri font only. So where is the sample? Okay. So this is a student who did her research on Vietnamese Americans and the nail industry. So if you notice, she has her citation and they're in alphabetical order. So that's E, Eckstein, F, Fetterman, G, Nguyen, N, Fan. So you have to, how are you going to organize your sources? Alphabetical order. So once again, you start with your citation and then you go into your summary of what they found. What do you think about this resource? And lastly, what concept can you apply? So she felt that the best concept that relates to this article is the model minority. So once again, your source, summary, evaluation, application. Source, summary, evaluation, and application. So just remember that for your annotated bibliography, summary, evaluation, application. This is going to be worth 100 points. Make sure you follow the requirements and make sure you include your summary, evaluation, and your analysis. Last, your PowerPoint presentation. So you are going to create a PowerPoint Google slide presentation or whatever program Mac has. I don't use it, so I don't even know what it's called. But it doesn't matter what you use as long as it has a similar formatting. So you're going to just remember you're going to make it into a PDF file at the end of the day. So for your PowerPoint sections, this is going to be the formatting that I'm going to expect. So the first thing is going to be obviously your title, your introduction to the topic. Why is your topic important? Why should we care? State your research question. Cultural foundations. So this should look familiar, right? Where did this group originate? Look into migration patterns. What are 4 important cultural characteristics? 4, historical challenges. Same thing, this should be familiar. You're going to analyze a particular past social event. Contemporary challenge. Analyze a particular current social event or issue that contributes to modern day beliefs about this group. Number 6, countering stereotype, anti-racist aesthetic, sociological concept 5. Once again, this should be no surprise. We already went over this. You're going to have a discussion about why your selected piece of media is an example of anti-racist aesthetic. Then we go into the discussion. Once again, remember, this is the biggest part of your grade. You're going to have to analyze what you just discussed here. Cultural, historical, contemporary. What you discussed there, you're going to have to analyze that sociologically. So analyze and evaluate your findings, your first concept, your second concept, your third concept, your fourth concept. And then at the end, you just have your references. Once again, APA, ASA, MLA, whatever you're comfortable with. Remember, you should have already done your citations and your annotated bibliography. Copy and paste, copy and paste. Each of these sections is probably going to have 1 to 3 slides each. Totally up to you. And then just some additional details. PowerPoints can be written in paragraph form with full sentences, or you can simply choose to do bullet points. But just make sure that if you decide to go down the bullet point style, it's usually a bit more difficult for me to see that you actually understand the material and that you actually did the work. So if you decide to do bullet point style, make sure you are descriptive, clear, and insightful. If you decide to do bullet points, what does a bad slide look like? So just imagine one PowerPoint slide with issues with our criminal justice system, implicit bias, and that's it. That's not telling me anything. You're not explaining to me. Once again, the point of this project is for you to show me that you understand the sociology and that you understand race relations. And you simply writing issues with our criminal justice system, implicit bias, does not tell me anything. So what would a good slide look like? One of the biggest issues within our criminal justice system is implicit bias. Research shows that Americans hold prejudicial and stereotypical views that develop as a result of our exposure to direct and indirect messages from our experiences in media. What would make this slide stronger? Actual data, right? 45% of Americans have stated that they've been exposed to negative images of African Americans in the media, right? That would just make your argument stronger. But once again, if you just give me one sentence, that's not going to tell me anything. Make sure that your writing is clear and free of grammar errors. You are more than welcome to include pictures, graphs, or any additional visuals that help you present the information. And then once again, make sure you convert your presentation into a PDF format. I have an example of a good PowerPoint presentation. You do not have to include a picture of yourself. So I just want to throw that out there. So here is the introduction, the cultural foundations, the historical challenges, the contemporary challenges, and notice it's continuing, countering stereotype. So notice he chose Master of None, a Netflix show. And he explains why this is an example of anti-racist aesthetic. Why is this going against the stereotypes of South Asians? And then we get into the sociological application. His first concept is the model minority myth. The second concept is double consciousness. The third concept is social conflict theory. And then the last concept is authenticity. I can't say the word, sorry. And then he went above and then did a looking forward and then his reference. So really simple. I think that the project looks a lot more daunting than it really is. But once again, I have samples of your final PowerPoint presentation. I have a sample of your annotated bibliography. And once again, just make sure you meet the requirements and you follow the requirements for your research proposal and you should be more than okay. Make sure you have your research proposal emailed to me by the end of the week. I want you to have enough time to complete or to work on your research proposal. So hopefully you made it through the entire video. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Enjoy the rest of your week.